Hello and welcome to Rogue Voice, conversations that inspire and connect. I'm Tiffany Cooper.
And I'm Jessica Gomez. It is September now, right? And September is a little bit bittersweet. I know. This summer we've done, my family and I have done a lot of things, and it's been really fun to be with the kids. But, I think this is the time of year where parents take a little sigh of relief normally, and it's, no more cobbling together childcare and trying to fit in the day camps and figure out work schedules, kind of things get back to normal. But that's not going to happen this year. You must have friends and family that are working through these issues.
Yes, I do. I don't have any children of my own, but I do have family and friends, and they are all struggling in different ways and managing. And I think it's one of those things that it's a family issue too, where families have to decide what works for them. It's not one size fits all approach, and we're all in this together. And in the end, we are all trying to do better and provide for our families and the education. But to help us better understand the challenges school districts, community partners, and parents face school year, we have three special guests with us today. I would now like to welcome Bret Russell, Executive Director of the Valley YMCA, and Dr. Bret Champion, Superintendent of Medford School District, and Cassie Chan, full-time working mom of 2 elementary school-aged children. Welcome, and thank you both for joining us here today.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I myself have 2 kids, and they're 9, and my little one just turned 6. So we are still trying to figure this out. It is not easy. We're finally getting, we know who teachers are now, and that used to happen kind of, in the beginning of summer, we would know and have a chance to get acclimated. But things are upside down. School, just like lots of other areas of, businesses and everything else that COVID is impacting. And I know that there's a lot of work going on to try to figure this out together. So, Bret, I'd like to kind of turn to you and ask you the first question here to kick us off. It took a long time for districts to put together their plans and present it to parents. Can you talk about what that process was and what the current plan for Medford School District are?
You bet. Thanks, Jessica, and thanks for having us today. We're thrilled to be able to share some information about specifically for us, the Medford School District. The plan, I appreciate the question and completely understand from a parent's perspective how it feels like people were waiting to hear what's it going to be. We worked really hard to keep our families informed as we move forward. The reality is we are in completely unprecedented times, as you well know. And we are following the state of Oregon has some pretty rigorous requirements to have kids in school and what school looks like, whether we are in what we call brick or whether we're in click. So either in our buildings or in distance learning.
I like that.
Brick or click. We talk a lot about brick or click. We always held one goal, which was to ensure that every student receives a high quality education while we maximize the safety and wellness of our students, our staff, and our community. And so the state of Oregon has the same requirements. And so we worked through all of those details. To be quite frank, some of those details changed during the summer up to a couple of weeks ago from the state. And so we're hurrying to keep up and to keep our plans in front of folks. So our plan, as we now officially have it, which is great news since school starts on Tuesday, we are going to be in click for the first 6 weeks. One of the things we heard very clearly from families, because we got a lot of feedback on our plans, families said, please don't be going back and forth week to week. Please, we need to plan. It's something that you mentioned in your intro, that this is complicated, trying to navigate all these waters. And so trying to give our families the opportunity to know what's going to happen. We're calling the 6-3 plan, which is 6 weeks at a time, we're going to tell you where we're going to be. We're going to be in click for the first 6 weeks. And then 3 weeks into that time, we'll tell you what we're going to be doing for the next 6 weeks, so that everybody knows there's a rhythm that we're going to be using in the Medford School District. And so 3 weeks after we've started school, we'll be looking at the numbers, seeing if we're in the red, yellow, or green zone. Right now we're in red. The numbers are too high in Jackson County. If those numbers can come down, we can get into yellow, which will be more of a hybrid approach, with more of our kids being able to be in brick while some are in click. And eventually, we will be in green, a day we cannot wait for, when all of our students are back with us in brick, and we're able to do what we love to do, which is to teach kids.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, that is like the hopeful goal of all. But can you also talk a little bit about the consistency that is so important for families? Like, do you think this plan will change as the year progresses?
It will. There is no doubt that things, if there's one thing we know, that the only constant is change, right? And we have never lived it more than in this pandemic. We have a shared vision in the Medford School District that all are learning, and learning is for all. And never has that been more true than in this time. What we have guaranteed parents is, while there will be changes, we're not going to mess with it during the 6 weeks. And so during the first 6 weeks, we are in comprehensive distance learning. The next 6 weeks, we'll be announcing 3 weeks in, and we will be consistent with what that is. That we're on a trimester system, which is about 12 weeks for our grading periods. And so this breaks it up into those 6-week chunks. And while I know that it's not a lot of time for parents, we definitely wanted our families to have adequate time to get some things arranged, so that they could make arrangements for their kiddos.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love that. Well, Cassie, I'd like to have you jump in as a parent here. Could you tell us a little bit about your family and how you manage school during the spring shutdown?
Sure. I mean, thank you, Jessica and Tiffany, for having me on the show. And it's so nice meeting Bret and Bret in a Zoom meeting. I just heard of you guys a lot. I feel like I know of you, but I don't know you. The thing with this unprecedented time is that we have both full-time working parents. So my hubby and I both work in the healthcare industry, but we're very grateful that we have an option to work from home, started spring. So how we managed the remaining academic year was interesting. So I'm hoping that this is a place where I can share the reality with everyone in here and maybe be a voice for all the moms and dads out there. It is challenging. There are a few things that are challenging, is because with elementary school children, they're not independent enough yet to get on a schedule. So my husband and I stick to a Khan Academy schedule where academic time is 9 to 12. And in between those times, we have our Zoom calls as well. So there are times we're trying to help each other log on. And the other thing that we don't talk enough about is fighting for bandwidths. Everyone is on the internet. Then you get glitches, the kids are frustrated. There's one time where I have to get on my call and we're both busy, and my son missed his chance to participate because he was smart enough to turn off the camera. So when the teacher called on him, he walked away. So that was just one interesting fact. But the most interesting thing is, you've probably seen a lot of these YouTube videos, is that your kids will always find the perfect moment to crash your Zoom meeting. So there are times when I have to hide myself in the backyard and my kids found me. There are times when I'm in the bedroom, locked up, they're kicking the door like it's an emergency, kicking it down. So when you finally gave in and have your door open, they start jumping on the bed behind the call. So, I mean, I'm grateful I have great bosses and people that I work with where they're very understanding. So they're, they never give me a hard time about having my kids on the call. But when we have a client call, it is stressful. sometimes the other thing is they get very defiant, right? So they might not follow through on the work that they're supposed to do. So we've been managing that for the remaining academic year. And for the summer, we also signed them up at the YMCA camp, Brad. Thank goodness there's some kind of alternatives there so then they can get out and socialize.
You know, it's interesting. So Cassie and I think we have, our kids are very similar ages.
Very similar in age.
You know, they want and need and crave that attention. And the minute you're busy, they are all over it. So, and that is that's a real factor for parents when they're trying to work from home. Brad, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about YMCA and how things have changed for YMCA, you know, pre-COVID and you know what you're doing now, because from what I hear, the programs are very different. There's a lot more support available through the YMCA.
Yeah, well, thank you, and again, thanks to you and Tiffany for having me on the show, and so grateful for the conversation. It's such an important conversation, and we have that a lot as parents are calling into the YMCA. I think for me, I've just tried to lean on our long history at the Y. It's been around in America for 175 years, and we have just over that time have learned to shift and adapt. And yet again, we need to shift and adapt. So, you know, pre-COVID, we're well known for preschool and childcare, after school, out of school programs, youth sports, PE, swim lessons, and the list goes on. And it was, of course, shocking mid-March when, you know, those orders from the governor come out and say, yeah, most all of that is suspended.
Yeah.
But immediately, and together with the Medford School District, a few other districts, some medical organizations, we launched emergency childcare. And we as a community can feel really proud that we were one of the first in the state to get emergency childcare up and going. And that was originally designed for essential workers. And so time to thank Cassie for her work and for and my wife, who is a nurse. And so those essential personnel, but then, you know, the restrictions loosened a little bit, and it was designed then to help any working family, not just that list from the Homeland Security. It says here are the essential jobs. And then over summer, it was for any child, but still those COVID mitigation measures were in place. So, you know, I think that at first the effort was like doing whatever we can to save lives across the country. And now as I think we start to shift into recovery, it's about trying to support livelihoods and to support all of you that have children. And so what we're doing now, and again, Bret and I have been on the Zoom calls figuring all of this out, is that we'll have preschool childcare, and that will start next week, as well as what we call the Campus Connection childcare for school-age kids. And together with Kid Time Children's Museum, Kid Time's focusing on the traditional school day, so their programs are designed for that, where the YMCA programs typically are like 7:30 in the morning till 6, kind of that traditional work day. And not that anything is traditional anymore, but that's the plan. So there's some options with Kid Time, there's some options with the YMCA, and again, to thank Bret and his team for lots of support that's coming out to make those things a reality.
Yeah, right back at you, Bret.
I feel like what Tiffany was saying earlier, that everybody is sort of scrambling, all parents are scrambling across the board to figure out, you know, what their individual plans because everyone is a little bit different. And, you know, I hear you speaking, Brad, about 6 weeks, and you know, even that is tough as a parent to figure out what to do, because if I can't be with my child, I've got to come up with a different solution. Maybe I have to hire someone or figure that out. And now their schedule as well as our schedule are kind of up in the air. Cassie, how is your family planning for some of these you know, this changing environment this school year? What's your individual plan for your kids and your family?
Yeah, so it gives me about 6 months to really think through what are my goals and priorities for my kids. academically and socially. But at this moment, we're planning to have them, learn as much as they can, meaning my husband and I look at the budget and we decided to hire a tutor. And we're grateful to be able to do that. My only concern is that my kids, I feel like all the kids globally, not just my kids, I think academically, they're behind. So, yeah, for sure. So the biggest plan in place is how do we get them back in the schedule, into like reading daily, doing your math homework. And I would say this is basically our plan, is to maybe have that extra level of tutoring. I also know some of my friends, they decided to change their work schedule to 1 day a week. So that's affecting their paycheck. But they make those choices so that they can be with their kids and supervise them during those virtual learning time. And it's an individual choice, but I hope this will help everyone understand that maybe as a parent, we need to start thinking about what is the priority for our kids.
That's so interesting you say that too, because like supervising your children is another issue that we don't even talk about. We just assume the children are going to do the work, right? Sometimes parents don't have the same instincts like teachers to enforce those schedules and strictness, right? I have a friend that is also a teacher. She's got children, so she operates on a very strict, you're going to do this, X, Y, and Z. And the kids kind of know there's no other option to act out. And I guess it depends on, how strict too. As a parent, are you like, listen, I've got to work. I can't, I've got to worry about childcare, but I can't really supervise you on top of doing my own work. Which leads me to ask you, Bret, childcare is such a hot button issue. You received a lot of pushback online about childcare. It was originally going to be offered for a premium to district employees. For many, this didn't seem logical. Kids can be in a classroom for daycare, but not for school. How, if at all, has this plan shifted based on, say, feedback?
Yeah. So, well, first, I do want to thank you, Tiffany, and
That's a hard question.
I appreciate those words. You bet. No, I'm happy to address it. But the only thing I would say, Tiffany, in your most recent comment, you talked about strict. I wouldn't use that word. I would use structure. Cassie mentioned this idea of a schedule, and that's so important. We know as adults that's true, and for our kids, the same is true. The very first day we did virtual meetings, I found a great article that talked about how do you survive in a fully virtual world. And one of the number one things was you follow a schedule, and that's true for our kids as well. Whenever I was working straight from home, I would get up, I would wear my work clothes down to shoes, the whole 9 yards. And I would encourage our families to do the same thing. That it's the first day of school, do your first day of school things. Get up, get dressed for school. Take those first day of school pictures. Have a little spot. I don't care if it's part of if it's your kitchen counter. Have that be for your kiddo to do the work. So anyway, that one's free. I know that wasn't the question you asked, but that's so critical. But yeah, we did, and this is true across the nation. I think sometimes we forget, we have blinders on that what we're going through is we're the only place this is happening. It's happening literally across the nation. And this idea of, wait, we can't be in school, but kids can be in day childcare. How does that work? It's incredibly different, is the answer. And to be quite frank, what the partnership that we're talking about with Kid Time and YMCA, and I want to shout out to Sonny Spicer and Brad Russell and their teams. We have a plan that I think is going to be great for all of our families across the Valley, and we're excited to implement that. But we got to remember that the childcare is very different in terms of the structure and what that looks like. The cohort size is incredibly small. We're talking a group of Brad, what did we decide on? 10?
Yeah. It's been 10, and now we can go up to about 15 or 20. But those are pods.
That's right.
That's right. Very strict mitigation measures. And I just would add that there's a whole set of rules that schools have to follow, and there's a set of rules that childcare have to follow.
Right.
And when people ask, well, why can't one do what the other one does? Again, childcare from the beginning has been really designed to help those working families and to make sure that they can continue to work. It's not designed for everybody, right? The district works with thousands of kids. We're typically working with hundreds.
That's it. It's about scale. Brad's 100% right. It's about scale. So the size of the cohort smaller. Just think about the sheer numbers. We're talking about 2 or 4 pods of kids in our schools, which again, we're talking about 80, maybe 100 total bodies versus at our high school, we have 2,000 students alone, plus all their teachers. But I mean, you're just talking at just a huge ramp up of scale. So that's the difference between the two. And when you reduce the scale and the cohort size, the chances of spread and of making things worse with this COVID environment reduces dramatically. I want to give a shout out to the YMCA. They actually are used in studies here in Oregon as they looked at what the Y did during this summer. They had these small groups. They limited the size of the overall number of kids in the facility, and those are the numbers that the state is using to say, here's how it's going to be okay to do this. So it's actually based on science. It's not based on some random number. It's not that we can do daycare but not school just because of, I don't know, some random reason. It's actually based on numbers, and it's due to the good work that Brad and his team did this summer as they kept those small groups and kept everyone safe and prioritized, again, the health and safety of our students, our staff, and our community.
So, Brad, it sounds like you've been doing a lot of collaborative work, around care and working together with the districts. Can you talk a little bit about cost, right? What are some of the resources that are available for parents who are struggling with the additional cost of having to pay for childcare if they're working, on top of working through the school situation? What is really available to help parents?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. And as we know, families come in all shapes and sizes. And they have lots of different supports. The Y has a long history of helping single parents. And so I want to give a special shout out to the listeners that are single parents. And my work is driven to try to really help them, all families. But boy, a single parent, that is a tough job. So here's some of the options. I guess first, shockingly, right, when this all started, childcare was about $100 a day, $500 a week. Now, over time and scale and such, we've been able to get that down to $200 a week. But still, $200 a week is a lot of money. And especially when you add a number of kids to that equation. So just recently, and we'll be announcing these things real soon, is that with Medford, able to bring that down to almost $200 a month. And that's typically the kind of the cost that folks are used to in an after school or an out of school environment. And the way we get there is not one size fits all. Shout out to the United Way. There's a fund that has been helping families with childcare fees. Asante Providence, they're helping their employees with some childcare costs. Folks that know about employment-related daycare, they can apply, and even with acceptance or even a denial letter, they can also get some assistance. We have a relationship with the Housing Authority of Jackson County, so folks that live in a complex can get some assistance. So there's a number of different scholarship opportunities, or I call them scholarships, kind of financial assistance scholarships. And it just kind of takes case by case. We encourage folks to call, ask their questions. We can walk through those different options.
That's great that you mentioned that, because that's a big missing piece of the puzzle, where people find, where are the resources? And obviously you have to be resourceful to find the resources, because not, like you said, all families come in all shapes and sizes, and they have different types of support. that's really important to know that there are different ways for families to get childcare and have the financial support without having to choose between childcare and food or housing and childcare. That should never be the decision daily that families have to make. So thank you for, giving that shout out, but also just reaffirming that information. But I want to shift a little bit to you, Brad. Attending school is about so much more than reading, writing, and math. It also feels a need for social and emotional interaction, physical activity, and so much more. What do you think parents can or should be doing to help fill the void in both traditional learning and other aspects?
Yeah, it's cliche, but I think it's true. It takes a village to raise a child, and the reality is it just takes a lot more from all of us. It takes more for parents. It takes more for our staff, for those volunteers, for all of you. And it's just harder. And we're just going to have to dig in and do the work and lean on each other. And another cliche, but I believe in it, we are stronger together. And so we got to work together on this. But I would bounce that one to Cassie when it comes to, what can a parent do? We can offer a bunch of suggestions. We try to do our online exercise videos. The Y facility is open to some degree. It has its restrictions. You see a lot of folks getting creative. I do think about just again that it kind of family by family. And I guess my one piece of advice is don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask. Ask your neighbor, ask the school staff, ask the YMCA. We're just going to have to probably ask and lean on each other more than ever before.
That's
How
good.
about you, Cassie? What do you think that parents can do? And I'd also like you to answer, what is your biggest concern as we head into the new academic year?
Yeah, well, like I mentioned before, I think my priority is academic results, right? So every family is different, my biggest concern besides having them up to speed is I think no one talks about how we're going to protect our kids' vision during remote learning. Because if you think about how much screen time they have daily, whether they're home or at the daycare, think about that the chances of getting myopia, it's going to increase exponentially. And maybe parents should even look into talking to your kids about how to take breaks in between sessions, or maybe limit the time other than school time to be on the internet. So there are studies in Australia where my aunt recommended in these boarding schools, they actually lock up their iPads and their Chromebooks when times are not allowed for them to play any games. They actually lock up the devices. And I think because I do volunteer at my kids' school, and I remember that the Chromebooks are all stored in a drawer in the classroom. So my biggest concern is when my kids are not being supervised, they're online. They're supposed to be reading online, but they might click on YouTube, or maybe they just spend too much time on Prodigy playing math games. So those are my concern. So I already talked to them about, like, Brett mentioned earlier, the structure, the rules, and I believe teachers have done an amazing job in the classrooms having those rules. And when the grown-up is disciplined, the kids will follow. And I think the hardest part for parents is how are we going to be disciplined? And I would suggest if the school districts or any organizations might have funding or the resources to maybe help parents learn how to be a better teacher. I would say maybe having some kind of support group, maybe having little newsletters talking about how to help your kids focus, how to protect kids' vision, maybe, talk about scheduling. What is effective scheduling? Get them out of their PJs in the morning.
Gosh, that is such a great
Things
suggestion.
like that. Yeah, at least get them out of the PJ. I mean, we do the same. I mean, we can get away with our work Zoom meeting in our PJs and no makeup. And those are like little things like that, like a small support group. I think that might be helpful, you know, if you guys want to consider that. And like I said, I'm just here and try to help you guys better understand our struggles. But all in all, we're very grateful where we are. We still have a chance to work from home or have resources out there. We just have to go out there. And like Tiffany's point is, be resourceful. You know, maybe work a little harder.
I love that
don't
you're
be
sharing
afraid to
that.
ask.
I love that you're sharing that because it's so important. You touched on a few things that we don't have enough conversations around. You know, how to take small breaks. What does that look like for a family, for children, when you have so much homework online, and then you want to play online, play games, and then anxiety and the child's mental health because they are online. Those are so many issues. I feel like we could have another show, but there's not enough time to have another show. But I'm going to thank you, Bret, Cassie, and Brad, for such a great conversation, for helping us put into context the challenges that parents, administrators, and the community leaders facing as we head into a new academic year. I'm sure our audience appreciated hearing your unique perspective just as much as Jessica and I. So remember to tune in to Rogue Voice online every Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and connect with us on our YouTube channel and Facebook, where you can send us a message or leave a comment. We want to hear from you. So tune in, thank you, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.